Hi, I'm Taylor Mayde, and from 2006 to 2014, I was part of Columbus, Ohio's premier drag king troupe, the Royal Renegades. For 8 years, I performed as male, female, and non-binary characters, staged, managed, and co-produced over 30 drag shows. Through drag, I performed at bars and venues all over the country, and also made some incredible friends along the way. Together, we're Revisiting the Spotlight, a podcast recorded at Boxland Media where I connect with performers from my past to learn about their journey through the world of drag. Today we're talking with Jake Wakeman. Well, welcome.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the point of this podcast is to talk to performers from my past, and I don't think you and I have ever actually shared the stage together, but because of who you are in the drag king community of Columbus, I've always thought of you as like a godfather of drag in Columbus. So because of the hard work that you put into it, you are definitely a part of my history, just for laying down the groundwork. So people like me who came quite a few years after of everything that you put together were able to do it. So thank you for that.
Thanks for that compliment. I've never been called a godfather, but I'll take it.
No. Godfather of drag, that is.
Yeah, I love it.
So your drag name, Jake Wakeman, how did you come up with that?
Yeah, my story is a little bit different than some drag kings because I started out as a DJ on a night where a group of 3 of us planned this party that we called Fast Friday. And that was a play on a local lesbian event at a dance club called First Friday. So we were sort of, First Friday was awesome. It was a big dance club thing, and tons of lesbians came out, and it was great. But we wanted to do something a little different, and so we chose the second Friday of the month, and we called our event Fast Friday. And we conceived of it as a DJ, live music, and what we called a dyke or drag king revival. And so 3 people that night put on drag and performed. And in addition to that, we had dancing and we had a live band. And so from that, because it was so successful, we formed a drag king troupe, and I was the DJ. And I was not really interested in performing drag, but the community that we built with that drag king troupe was so supportive and so encouraging that eventually a couple of the kings pulled me out of the DJ booth. They were like, come on, you need to get on stage. And I had already started drawing on sideburns because I love sideburns. But I don't consider myself like a natural performer. I just loved music. And eventually the drag king, the just being part of that community as the DJ and watching it for 2 years and having people pull me out and encourage me, because I'm a little bit shy. Yeah. That's what made it happen for me. So they asked me to be part of a group number, and that made me feel a lot more comfortable because I didn't feel like the spotlight was for me. Right. So I started out in group numbers and then eventually did some solo numbers. But that took me a long time to feel comfortable to do a solo number.
And was Jake Wakeman your DJ name that transferred over to your drag name?
No, so my DJ name was Query. So I spelled it Q-U ?ERY. So I went by DJ Query or just Query. And then when I decided to get on stage, I first just chose the name Jake. My dad's middle name is Jacob, and I grew up having my mom call him Jake, like in a really kind of endearing way. Hey, Jake, or shake a leg, Jake. And so I chose to use that name kind of as a tribute to my dad.
Okay. Yeah, when you mentioned that you prefer group numbers over solo numbers, I am 100% with you. I don't like to be the center of attention at all. So anytime someone asked me to be in a group number, I was like, yes, because I like being on stage, just not by myself. And as my career went on in drag, like the number of solo performances dwindled by a lot. I was like, I don't want to do solo anymore.
The only time I could do solo was when I loved the song so much that I could just get into the song. Like for me, my choices were always driven by the music. And so if it was there was one song in particular by the New Radicals. I can't remember what it was called. It was their biggest hit. But I just loved that song so much that I was able to get like detached from the 400 people that I was in front of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I was okay. But if I had awareness about all those people out there, it was just too hard for me.
So the songs that you chose for your solo numbers, did that influence any type of character that Jake Wakeman would take on?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, so my character, I didn't start out with an intention of this, but again, because I was typically drawn to things because of the music that I liked, sort of like indie boy kind of, you know, sort of slightly maybe romantic, but not with any kind of ego.
Yeah.
And a softie, I guess, just sort of like kind of an indie emo boy, maybe something like that.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned First Friday, and that was at Wall Street.
Yes.
R.I.P. Because Wall Street, I think, is a part of every Columbus lesbian's history.
Yes.
For the most part, just because they created this environment for us, this safe environment for us. So with the numbers that you performed, we talked a little bit about you kind of like the characters that you would have. Did you have an overall drag persona?
Well, again, because I like doing group numbers, I was often, and one of my closest friends in the troupe was Heidi Madsen, who performed as Toby. She's sort of a slapstick kind of performer, and she's since, she still does drag, but she has since gone on to do clown performances.
Yeah.
Which is a perfect evolution.
For her, yes.
So we were often doing things like something from Austin Powers, or we did a Grease number. We did the Full Monty. So something that had a comedic element to it often. We did Ghostbusters. What else did we do? We were always choosing something that had a comedic element to it that wasn't serious. I mean, I'm not Mr. Masculinity in my boy persona at all. So for me, it was all just about kind of comedy, or I guess later in the years that I performed, my partner, who I've been with now for 23 years, she started performing with us with Royal Renegades. And so sometimes we did some numbers that were kind of like romantic.
Yeah.
But in our case, we were portraying two men. So she was dressed up as a man, I was dressed up as a man, and we were having not any super sexualized, but
Sure.
you know, a sensitive kind of
Sure.
like experience that went along with the music.
I brought in my wife on a few of my numbers that had kind of like a romantic tone to it.
Yeah.
There was one number that I did where we were the female character and I were going to share a kiss on stage, and I was like, I'm gonna bring in my girlfriend for this one. She was my girlfriend then. My wife now, but I was like, I'm just gonna play it safe. And
Yes.
honey, would you like to be in a number with me, please?
Oh my God, I tried. So because, again, His Kings was so supportive, one of my best friends in that circle was Reardon. And he was just always my cheerleader. And he was like, there was this song that I really loved by Roxy Music. God, it was from a film. It was a super sexualized scene where, God, what was that movie? Like 9.5 Weeks, maybe? Does that ring any bells? I don't know. There was, the song is called Slave for Love. And then the film, it's a super hot sex scene where there's, it's heterosexual, but where they're in a kitchen and there's like, they're feeding each other food. And I love the song. And Jackie or Jack, Jax Reardon encouraged me to do that number with him. And he was, oh my God, he was one of my favorite drag kings because he just channeled his numbers. I mean, it was like he was that performer. So he was like, come on, we can do this. And it'll be sort of like a leather scene. And we did it at Blazers. Did you go to Blazers?
I did, yeah.
Blazers is like a shoebox. It's so tiny. And I was so nervous about it. And I just flopped it. I could not do I couldn't do it. I just,
Yeah.
we practiced it, and I'm trying to be sexual, and it was awful.
Yeah.
So from then I was like, no more anything that has any romance. It has to be my partner.
Yeah. Yeah. I've performed with Reardon a few times, and he brings just such charisma to the stage. And
Yeah.
he's wonderful to perform
Yeah,
with.
he's just one of my favorites, top notch.
What was your inspiration for the numbers or the songs that you chose?
Again, for me, it was really, I loved the music. I loved the particular song, or the message of the song. So that New Radical song really just, it got into my bones, like, as Julie. And and it was very popular at the time. So that was one that, I think that's my favorite number of a solo number I ever did. I also did one to a band called The Streets, and that was a little more, that's sort of like British hip-hop-ish a little bit, sort of club hip-hop, and that was really different for me, but that one had a really strong message, and I was really drawn to it for that reason. It was some social justice. I can't remember exactly, but for me, it was all either I felt really connected to that song musically, or there's some message in the lyrics that I felt like was an important thing to share with an audience.
Yeah. Do you remember what the message was?
Oh, it would have been political, and I'm sure it was all about some sort of liberation for marginalized people. I should have listened to it again before I came in here, but what was that song called? The Streets had one popular song, and this would have been like 2004, 2005 or something like that. And it was, I feel like it was anti-violence. I can't remember.
It's difficult doing a political number for both the performer and being an audience member, because when the performer will hold up some message like, 9 out of 10 women are assaulted every Friday night or something, as an audience member, you're like, yes, that's good information to know, but I don't want to cheer that.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah.
and then as the performer, you're holding up this sign with like a very important information, and no one's responding to it. So it's very difficult to do political numbers and make it entertaining, but also, give that information that people need.
Yeah, it's true, and it really challenges the audience, because most of the time they're there for entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's, for us with His Kings, was a big part of what we did, was not just entertaining, but trying to make sure that we had a purpose behind the entertainment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really, that was a big driver for me in doing drag.
What year did you start with His Kings, and did you jump over to Renegades afterward?
So we founded His Kings in September of 1996. Well, and again, we called it Fast Friday. By the time we did our second show, we had a name of a troupe and a logo and T-shirts and key rings, because the first one we did was so massively successful, and we expected people to come out, but we didn't expect a line out the door and around the street. And this was at Summit Station, which is also a small bar and a place that was typically had 20 to 30 people in there on a Saturday night. And here we had over 200 and more people that wanted to get in.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I started in 96. I feel like His Kings had a really good run. We did so much. We toured. We started the International Drag King Extravaganza. But we were like any family. We had internal tension, and eventually we just couldn't resolve it and stay together. And so I left the troupe, and so did a number of other people. And then some of those people, combined with some newer people who were interested in performing, created the Royal Renegades. And I believe that was Christy Wisman who came up with the name of that troupe.
Yeah. Because
she was in Philadelphia, so there was a Philly Royal Renegades and a Columbus Royal Renegades.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were a franchise of sorts. But yeah, I ended up being in Royal Renegades. I didn't take on the same kind of leadership role I did with His Kings, because I was burnt out. And I also, it was really painful, that that split, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to risk having my heart hurt again.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was with the Renegades, I was on the business side of it as well. And it's so difficult when you have such passion for what you're doing and you have a very specific vision of what you want to do. And then someone who is just as passionate is right next to you with a completely different vision. And you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, you're still learning who you are and how to vocalize your own opinions and your ideas. And it's just with having that much passion and love for something that you do in an art form, it's very difficult to kind of take a step back and make it a group project instead of just your own.
Yeah.
So, when I left the Renegades, for the business side of it anyway, I swore I will never get involved on the business side of anything again. And then that lasted like a year until I went to theater and got, involved in that. So, yeah, you are right about just the heartbreak that you go through.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing is, remember that everybody who's doing it is queer in some way. So we're already marginalized in our society.
Right.
Most of us had no money or very little money, and because we're in our 20s. And so, for me at that stage of life, once I discovered this club scene and the drag, and that's where I put my energy. My jobs where I earned money were that's what I did to earn money.
Right.
But my heart and soul was in this drag king troupe. So, and I wasn't alone in that. So, all those things combined with different backgrounds, different races, ethnicities, it was like a cauldron of potential stuff, and we weren't as mature.
Right.
To do it now, I think we would be in a different situation.
Oh,
but
yeah.
to do all of that, and we're doing it also underground because in 1995 and through 2000, whatever, I don't know how long the Renegades ran, no one's paying attention to us.
Right.
Only
one cares.
our other lesbians who followed us. But it's not like we had a RuPaul who was cheering us on.
Right.
So we're like the marginal of the marginal, and that adds stress too.
Yeah. Doing group numbers, being within a troupe, and going to rehearsals, you start to build that like family dynamic because you're with each other all the time.
Yeah, I mean, now we were doing this before cell phones, but we used to say, like, when we were out on one of our out-of-town trips or a week of a show, we would have no messages on our voicemail machines because we were all with each other. Right. The only people that were calling us or talking to us was each other. And we would just always joke like, well, yep, no messages because we're all together. But yeah, we were, oh my God, I mean, we were celebrating holidays together, people's weddings, people's breakups, all the rehearsals, going to brunch after the shows. I mean, we were like this just all the time. And that's why, for me, I liken it to a family because we got all of that benefit of a very loving family, and then we had all of the struggle when things got hard, the way families do. And I think some of that is because you trust each other, right? Like we know we love each other, and so we can fight safely-ish. But it also made it hurt a lot too because we cared so much about each other.
Yeah. And that's another thing with being in your 20s and having that kind of time and energy to put into building a troupe together, as opposed to now, I'm in my 40s now, I don't have the time nor the energy to build a troupe and to go to rehearsals, 3 times a week and then have a show. But that's kind of the trade-off that you get with, so you're in your 20s, you have the time and energy, but you don't have the maturity. And in your 40s, you don't have the time and energy, but you have the maturity to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing that's important to note, too, is this was 25, 30 years ago. So we have to remember that, like, being queers who were doing this 30 years ago, we're not in a climate where we can count on family support,
right?
Where the city of Columbus is throwing up the rainbow flags on High Street.
Yeah.
I mean, we are a group of people in our 20s and early 30s who, many of whom have been rejected by our families, who are forming our own chosen families. Some of us experienced physical violence just on the street, looking the way that we looked, not in drag, but just in our daily lives.
Yeah.
Some of our performers were, we weren't using the language quite this way yet, but we're realizing through doing drag that they were trans and starting to transition and getting hormones on the internet or on the street. And so I think it's really important to recognize the climate we're doing this in. It was both what made it so special, but also added extra stress because so many of us were carrying this trauma, and we're looking, not consciously, but looking back on it, I can see that we needed each other for the love and connection and the family that we created. And then when it did hurt, it hurt even more because it was like, this is our chosen family.
Yeah.
And now we have conflict, and how do we get through our conflict? And some of it we just couldn't get through.
No, we didn't have a support system outside of that. You couldn't go to your family and be like, well, I'm fighting with my best friend over, gluing facial hair onto my face. How do we get past that? Like there wasn't that type of talk.
Yeah. And there wasn't even, now I've worked in healthcare for a long time. Language is really, it's on everybody's tongue is trauma-informed care. Had I had that language 30 years ago, I would have understood a little bit more about how much we were all carrying our own trauma. And I think if we could have talked through that and been a little more gentle with each other, we might have been able to get through things. And it's not like we didn't get through things. We got through things over and over again. But then eventually it was like, okay, it's hurting too much now. And I think we just didn't have the knowledge or the tools that we have now. But I also wouldn't change it for anything.
Anything in the world.
Nothing.
Right. I remember just being when I first started doing drag, the world wasn't as safe as it is now, or at least as nurturing toward queers and drag kings, drag queens. And I remember just coworkers making friendly conversation. So what are you doing this weekend? And I have that dilemma of, do I just say, oh, nothing much, or I'm in a drag king show. Would you like to come? Did you feel comfortable telling outsiders?
Well, I'll tell you what happened for me was I was so enmeshed in drag that my work world was situated around drag. So once I came out and felt confident in my identity, I went to graduate school here in Columbus at Ohio State in women's studies, and that surrounded me with all kinds of queer feminists, and it was in that context we formed His Kings. But I just didn't want to go in the closet. Yeah. And I tried to find a job that was something that seemed professional, and I just didn't have any luck. I had a degree that was very liberal arts, and in 1997, nobody even knew what women's studies meant, and so I ended up working in a queer coffee shop. I was DJing. I started my own DJ business. What else did I do? I coached swimming, but I did that for the team owner was a gay man. So I was building my world in a queer environment. And I worked for an AIDS service organization. Okay. So in all those places, I could be out. And so for me, I was promoting our shows in my spaces. Like I would, at the coffee table, I would put out flyers for our events. The only place that I wasn't doing that was in coaching swimming, but that didn't happen for me until after His Kings was over. Okay. So I was using my work life as a platform for drag. But that was, again, unusual because for me, I made this choice that I am not going in the closet. And so I don't care if I'm not making money. Yeah. I just chose, while I'm in my 20s, what matters to me most is seeing where we go with this His Kings thing and pushing the boundaries of the gender binary. We didn't use that language then, but that's what it was. Yeah. Deconstructing the socially constructed nature of gender. And I didn't care about anything else. Yeah. I'm from Appalachia, and I know how to live on nothing. I had roommates. Columbus was cheap back then, and I was like, I don't really care. I will worry about a career in my 30s, and I just lived it up in my 20s and loved it. So I didn't have to deal with that. By the time I get to my mid-30s and my drag stuff is waning a little bit, I needed health insurance, and so I went and got a job. But even then, I was working in HIV. I did that at the state health department, and so I was much more quiet. However, I did have... and you're actually on the poster. I had a poster for a Royal Renegades show in my cubicle. Laura was in it.
Yeah, we did some like back to school
Yes,
themed show,
yes,
and we were all
yes.
in.
There was a ruler.
In these plaid schoolgirl
Yes, yes.
skirts and a white button up top. I remember that
was
photo
maybe
shoot.
a little too tight.
A little bit, yeah. Well, you know. That's how we would get people in the door.
Yeah, well, it worked. And I proudly hung that poster in my cubicle at the Ohio Department of Health. So, yes. And it wasn't, I wasn't the most, wasn't easy trying to be out in the state health department in 2007. But by then I'm 37 years old and I'm like, whatever. So I had a different path in that respect, but for me that was really just because I wasn't willing to compromise my identity.
And you shouldn't have to.
I shouldn't, but you know what it cost me is it cost me 15 years of retirement savings and earnings.
Yeah.
And I don't care because I don't really care about money all that much because I am scrappy and I've figured out how to save and how to... I still was able to buy a home and things like that. But when we talk about the economic disparities for lesbians and our lifetime earnings, I mean, I'm a perfect example of someone. I made that choice because I was highly educated, but I made that choice to compromise my income and then my retirement savings and my health insurance because I wanted to be out.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have to do that, but 15 years, like I didn't start a professional job until I was 37.
Yeah.
So I had 15 years of my working life where I wasn't saving. I was, I was doing it in my own way, but I wasn't invested. I wasn't, building all that equity that you get when you are doing a professional job for 15 years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think it's really smart the way that you would promote your shows by using your work environment and the safe space that you created to get the word out there. Because back then there wasn't Facebook. There might not have even been MySpace.
No.
Yahoo ads, like none of that.
Nothing.
None of that was there. I remember going to an IDKE, which I do want to talk about, and it was one of the conference topics was how to promote. And the Royal Renegades were presenting, and we said, oh, go flyer parking lots. Bring a flyer and just put it under wiper blades and hit every car. And someone who was from New York was like, what's a parking lot? And we were like, oh, right. Okay,
Yeah.
So we had to keep that in mind, that the way that we promote isn't always an option for another troupe to do.
Yeah, and I mean, it was truly, in that era, there were still feminist bookshops, there were queer coffee shops, multiple bars in a town, and you could put flyers on telephone poles.
Yeah.
And for the very first show we did for His Kings, we flyer at the Ohio Lesbian Festival, and that was a gathering of people from all over the country. And then we also, that was at the time, Human Rights Campaign was getting some steam. And you remember those equal sign stickers that they used?
The blue with the yellow. Yeah.
So any car we saw that had a sticker on it, we were sticking the flyer under the windshield wiper.
Right.
And that's how we did it.
That's so funny you mentioned the HRC stickers, because when I was in my late teens and early 20s, there wasn't like Facebook or anything. There was no way to meet other lesbians except for the brave ones who put HRC stickers or rainbow stickers on their bumper. And then I would see it at, college campus, and sometimes I would just leave a little note and be like, I'm gay too. Do you want to be friends?
Yeah.
Here's my AIM name. Message me on AIM.
Yeah.
And I actually met one of my very good friends that way, and we've been friends for 25 years because of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that, when you are isolated and marginalized, you still find ways to communicate. I mean,
Right.
we have done that as a queer culture for centuries. So it is harder for younger people to conceptualize how we did that, but there's always a way to find people like you. You just have to know what to look for.
Right. So IDKE, the International Drag King Extravaganza, is probably one of the biggest highlights of my life socially because of the people that I met, the absolute fun that I had, and you were one of the founding members of that.
Yeah, so we started His Kings in '96, and we dove in full force. And in part, Lester and I, we had both just graduated from graduate school with these very liberal arts degrees. It was difficult to find professional jobs. We were very committed to doing this work because it was political. I mean, it was artistic and cultural, but also political. And so we really felt like by doing these performances, we are pushing back on social construction of gender. We are elevating voices and stories of people of color. We're pushing back against all of these structures that are oppressive. And so that's what we were driven to do. And we started touring, and that was going really well. And we were communicating through listservs on the internet. So there was a Drag King listserv, and so it was starting to be that we could find each other electronically, not just in person. And myself and Donna Troca, who was DJ Love, we were also in grad school together, we started talking about how, we could see the opportunity in the burgeoning Drag King community to pull us together in a collaborative way before it became competitive.
Right.
Because drag queen world is very competitive. And we felt like, how radical would it be to pull us together in a collaborative way, to learn from each other, to support each other, to showcase our work, not to crown a king, but to say, okay, we're going to do kind of an invitational. That's what IDK was. And so we were talking about it with our troupe and with Luster, and I'm like a dreamer, and Luster's also a dreamer, but was kind of in the practical sense saying like, all right, sounds like a great idea, but we need to see a proposal. So Donna and I sat down at her kitchen table in Clintonville and wrote a proposal. And we pitched that to the Kings, because we were doing things very consensus driven. And I feel like it was February when we pitched that, and we said, we'll do this in October. And they were like, you can't do that in October. And we called it international right out of the gate. And we were like, yes, we can. Like, here's how. And we had a timeline and a plan, and we did it. We busted our ass.
Yeah.
But we did it. I do LGBTQ swimming, and so I was traveling with the swim team. And so I went to Washington, D.C., and I dropped off flyers in the bookstore. And I went to Chicago and dropped off flyers in the bookstore. And people found us and the listservs, and we started getting registrations. And, in the fall of 1999, we did the first IDKE, and it was off the charts successful. I mean, and then also being people who were rooted in an academic environment, we planned a conference. We had this thing called Dragdom, which was an open, kind of like karaoke for drag. For people who were interested in trying but didn't know how. We created a space for them. So we brought in academics, photographers, people who just love to watch drag, artists who were drawing pictures of drag, into Columbus for a weekend of really just drag revelry. I mean, it was... I don't even feel like I should be modest about this. It was amazing. Like, we worked so hard, and we put together such an intentional event, and it was just awesome. And then we just did it again and again and again.
And again, yeah.
And we structured it in the same way that International Gay and Lesbian Aquatics is structured. So, eventually we were like, okay, this is not going to belong in Columbus. It's going to travel. And that was in part because we wanted to share this amazing thing we created and see what other local communities would do with it. And it lived for 12 years. And I don't know, someday it's coming back.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I
it needs
hope
to.
So it definitely needs to. So with it being international, who was the first country aside from the United States that was involved in it to make it international?
Canada.
Canada. Okay.
Yeah. So but
Canada.
several people from. So we had Toronto represented, and Winnipeg. So two provinces or two cities and provinces in Canada in that very first year. And I would have to look back to see if there was anybody else, but there were a handful, like 6 maybe people that came down from Toronto, and one person that came from Winnipeg.
Okay.
And then, from beyond that, like later on, we had people from Australia, people from Austria, Germany. I don't think we ever got anyone from Japan, but we knew that there were some people doing drag king style stuff in Japan, but I don't think we ever had anyone. So yeah, it was truly international right out of the gate.
Yeah, yeah. For the IDKEs that I was a part of, I want to say we had people from Egypt and Romania come over
So see,
and
I
perform.
didn't.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was just eye-opening to see like their expression of gender bending, basically.
Yeah, and this is before YouTube. So we weren't able to see each other's performances unless we were physically together.
Yes.
So that is part of what made it so unique, because each troupe or each king in their location was making their own interpretation of what does drag king mean or look like. And yeah, it was radically different we had this troupe come from Olympia, Washington, and they were just the most, they were grungy and DIY and in-your-face political, and we were all like, damn. We thought we were political. Right. So it was amazing.
Yeah. And then, so with IDKE, you were able to travel all over the country. Were you able to ever leave and go to another country because of drag?
Not with IDKE, but I did, like I said, I swim, and there's a huge network of LGBTQ athletes. So I was able to talk about drag king stuff at the International Out Games in 2006. There was a workshop. I think I presented the workshop. I don't know. I pitched the idea of doing drag at these events, at the gay games and at the out games, and was never able to make that happen. And that was in part because it's so expensive to travel internationally. And I was not interested in doing any kind of solo performance. My interest was in having his kings together, even if it was just like 5 of us, to do something. And we just couldn't pull that off financially.
I remember when I was with the Royal Renegades, one of our goals was to invite troops from outside of Columbus, outside of Ohio, and to give them a stage to show us how they do it in their hometown. And we were able to pay them with the door money. So, I'm sorry you weren't able to get that going.
Yeah, it was disappointing, but by creating IDKE, we created this platform for people all over the world, and it really worked. So it was amazing. And I'm glad you mentioned that, the way that you brought people in, that you shared the door money with them.
Yeah.
And that's something that that his kings did from the very beginning. We paid our performers. We had an arrangement with the bar where we got the cover.
Yeah.
And that is not a typical arrangement for performers. Like, ask a drag queen. How many drag queens
You're right.
are, they're typically not performing as troops. But we were running the production, and the bar was, they were like, sure, take the venue, we get the bar, we'll sell all the drinks. And we brought in so many people. They must have made so much money that night.
Yeah.
So, but we started out at this grungy bar at Jack's at Summit Station, and they were so happy to have us, but we outgrew the space. And we kept asking Wall Street, bring us in, bring it. Oh, they didn't want to do it. But eventually, I think they smelled the money, and they were like, okay, these people are legit. They're pulling these steady crowds. We want them. So they brought us into Wall Street. But we went in with a very clear understanding that we keep the door.
Right.
We're charging the cover, we're collecting the cover, we're keeping the cover. You guys keep the bar, but we're keeping the cover. And that's what enabled us to do the traveling that we did. It enabled us to pay for our hotels, pay our performers. We paid we had people who helped us, like we had security, we had a seamstress, so anyone that we were traveling with, or not even traveling, anyone that was helping us produce this event was getting compensated from that door. And, that meant that we were proprietors, right? Like we had a power because of those finances that I don't think very many drag performers present day, king or queen, have
that. Yeah. When I was with the Renegades, I was on the business side. So I remember I was the treasurer, basically, and I would divvy out the money for performers, and we kept the door money. And so we were able to set our own price for admission. And the performers split 50% of the door, and the other 50% went to troupe expenses, putting it in savings. And so we were able to travel with that and have that. And if I knew then what I know now, I would have adamantly been like, we need to be a nonprofit. Like, we need to do something with the Royal Renegade name. But, live you learn.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we were fortunate enough with Fast Friday. So we ended up calling our production company Fast Friday Productions. And there was an attorney in town who was a lesbian activist, feminist, who was like, you guys need to incorporate, get a tax ID number, all that. So we had an LLC. We filed taxes. And we were also being charitable with the money that we earned. We were donating to local causes. Now, we're not getting the kind of accolades that Nina West gets because we weren't making as much money, right? Like our crowd was lesbians, and so they're coming in with their $1 or $2 extra they have to tip us that night.
Right.
And there wasn't big money involved, but we were always sharing some of what we earned that night with a local nonprofit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think you're right that we were business owners, right?
Yeah,
like,
just had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. It was amazing, and I feel like for us, we learned about the independence of being business owners and also the responsibilities, I think, of how we treated essentially what were our contractors. I mean, we had people sign forms, and, we had them sign for it was always cash, right? right. It started out, here's your $10, but by the end, between tips and the cut of the door, people were earning $100, $120 a night. Yeah. That was big money in 1999.
Yeah.
It's still good money now.
It's still good money now, yeah.
Yeah, but that was when people were earning $7 an hour at minimum wage, and most of the people that were part of our troupe were working minimum wage or low wage jobs. So this was a big economic, stimulus for people who did this performing.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to do it that way, right? Like we didn't have to. We could have said, well, we're not going to pay you at all. Or we could have said, you're going to get a flat fee of $15, and people would have done anything because they just wanted to be part of it.
Right. Yeah, you are absolutely right about that. I was paid as a performer, as a stage manager, as a flyer designer, and as a steering committee member. So and then tips for my performances. So I was paid quite well for each show that I did. But whenever I got paid, I kind of felt bad about it because I loved performing so much. I loved being a part of a drag king troupe that I was like, I would do this for free. I would pay you to let me be a part of this. So
yeah, and I mean that is so important, and that's where, for us with Fast Friday Productions, we were in no way in the world going to exploit that, and that is so often what happens in arts and culture environments is that the people who are running the productions, they know this about their artists. They know the artists are desperate to do their art. They're desperate to have a venue. They love it so much, and it's exploitive. Yeah. And for us, we were, I really have to credit Luster for that because I am business oriented, and I was like, yes, we should pay people, but can we just get off the ground? Like, can we have a few shows
Right.
and establish a foundation maybe before, just a footing, for because I was putting everything, that's the other thing. I was putting everything on my credit card.
Okay.
Like I'm charging all the
Right.
supplies. And
Yeah.
so I'm stressing, a little bit about the money, but Lester was adamant, no, we need to pay people, even if it's just $10. And it worked. And I've worked in public health for decades now, and I mean, I pay people. If you're sharing a story with me or you're sharing your skill, you're getting paid. And it might not be what you deserve, but I think this is one way the lesbian and queer community, we keep ourselves unwittingly disempowered by not valuing our work
Yeah.
with money. I mean, I hate capitalism, but the truth is we live in a capitalist world.
Yeah.
And we can only lift ourselves up if we are lifting ourselves, or at least financially, if we pay each other.
Right.
We have to pay ourselves.
I think I must have. I first thought I learned this from the Royal Renegades, but now I think that I learned it from his Kings. That I do movies now. I make horror movies basically in my backyard, but I will always pay my actors and I will pay my crew. I can't pay them a lot, but I will pay them what I can to show that I appreciate you. I appreciate what you are bringing to the table, and your craft and your skill and your talent deserves something, whether that's monetary or not.
Yeah. Well, it's something that artists, people who are passionate about what they do, it's almost like it's ingrained into us that we aren't valuable.
Yeah.
That we have to just scrap and claw and accept nothing to be able to do our work. And it's not fair. It's not right. And oftentimes there are production companies behind these things that have more resources than they let on. And I think they just exploit people.
Yeah.
So it's a shame. But yeah, I would say when I got involved with Royal Renegades, that's definitely something I took, because I was involved with the business side of it for a little bit with Gavin and Red Ryder. Did you know Red Ryder?
I think right when I was coming in, they were coming out.
Okay, yeah. So what year did you start?
2006, February 2006.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I must have done some business stuff for a little while, but I wasn't like the. I agreed to do it because I wanted to show Gavin and to model really and support them, but I think for sure by 2004 or 5 I wasn't doing that stuff with them anymore.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, it's just. I think it's a lifelong lesson to learn.
How different would your life be if you never got involved with drag?
Oh my God, I can't imagine my life if I hadn't gotten involved with drag. I really don't know. I was in graduate school studying something I was very passionate about. I was studying, it was women's studies, but my interest was popular culture, representations of lesbians on the screen, right? And so where would I have gone with that? In 1997, there was no opportunity to get a PhD in my field. So had drag not happened, I would have graduated with that degree and I wouldn't have had something to care about and feel validated with. I don't know that I would have had it because professionally, it's not like no one was recruiting me. I couldn't open the newspaper and see an advertisement for MA in women's studies to do any kind of job. So I don't know where I would have gotten my validation of self from and my community. And it's really driven me my whole life. I mean, people have, I've been asked before, are you retired? And I was like, I don't consider myself, at one point I did, but now I don't consider myself retired. I just consider myself sort of just on pause. But when there's an opportunity to do drag with my circle of friends or with people who are supportive and encouraging, and I can know that it's going to be fun. I did it last summer, and I loved it just as much as I did 25 years ago.
You were involved with the historical marker for Summit Station. Is that correct?
Yep. So we did. I did it with Heidi, of course, and Heidi's awesome to work with because she gets an idea, and she's kind of likes to control, or we were talking about this. So as long as I come in and do what she tells me to do,
Right.
then it's fabulous. And I'm happy with that because, like you said, I have 2 kids now. I have a job. I don't have time to do rehearsal,
Yeah.
shop for costumes. Heidi's got a partner, but she has no kids. And so you just show up at her house. She's got your costume. She's got it all. She's got the music cut together. She's got your words. I learned the routine in an hour. It was so much fun. I performed it twice that weekend. And I was just like, God, I love this.
I was in 2 numbers with Heidi. They were both affiliated with IDKE. And it was one of those, hey, anybody wants to be a part of the number, come on over. And we did. And it wasn't, let's talk about what number we want to do. It was, okay, so this is the song. This is who you're going to play. This is who's going to choreograph it. And we're just like, okay. So through drag, I learned how to be a prop, basically. I learned how to be someone's prop. And that's okay.
Well, that's a role, right? Like
it is a role.
I mean, with Heidi being Heidi's like personality, that wasn't a really important thing to bring to our troupe at times. Now, there were times when other kings were like, "Don't tell me what to do,"
Right.
you know. But
Yeah.
because we had group performances and solo performances, there was a space for everybody. And yeah, for me, as someone who didn't like the spotlight and didn't want a solo number right away, the group numbers were just such a great way to be part of it and to do it with low risk because I didn't have to figure it all out. And someone was teaching me the steps, and when I got it wrong, they just laughed. You know what I mean? It was just like, oh, Julie's not that great at choreography, so put her in the back. You know, we had one standard number or like move. We had this move where we would like 4 of us would be in a line, and one person would jut out, and the other person would jut out.
Yeah,
and
very like Brady Bunch move.
Yeah. So that got recycled over and over, you know. So if I'm in a number, it's going to be something like that. But again, that goes to, I think for me, what it helped me develop a lot of confidence. And I wouldn't say, I mean, again, being rejected by my family, being from living in an era where girls can't, you know, we were supposed to get married and you know, work at home, and we weren't allowed to play sports or weren't allowed to play sports professionally, or it just affirmed who I was, you know, affirmed who I was. And I didn't have that before drag.
Yeah.
I didn't. And to have that, to find that at age, well, I was 26, and to carry that with me through the rest of my life, it's just worth its weight in gold. I mean,
Yeah.
And I think that many people you talk to will probably say the same thing. Like, how do you feel? What would your life be like without drag?
I would not be sitting here today. I would either not be alive, or I would be miserable in some city elsewhere, and I wouldn't have jumped to theater, which led to me doing film, which is like my entire happiness and existence. So, yeah. It's funny knowing just one thing that you did in your 20s. I was asked to be in a number. Beaker asked me to be in a number in February 2006 because I fit the dress that she had. That was it. That was the only thing that she wanted me for, was because I fit the dress that she had picked out. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. That's fine. And then got on stage, the bug bit, and, you know, 20 years later, I'm still talking about it and just as much in love with it now as I was then.
You know, I'm so glad you said that, because that is also a central piece of what His Kings and Royal Renegades was about. It wasn't like possessive. It wasn't like, you know, I'm the best drag king or I'm the best drag queen and you have to do all these things to be good. It was like, this is a community that you can be part of.
Yeah.
And so maybe you will be a prop, or maybe you're going to work backstage, but we weren't in the habit of saying no. We were in the habit of saying yes.
Yeah.
And constantly growing. Like I said, depending on who was in our friend circle, there were times when we had a seamstress and there were times that we had a driver, and, you know, because it was always about finding, when someone expressed an interest in our troupe and being part of it in whatever way, we found a way. We just didn't say no.
Yeah.
And that's a really different way to move through the world, to just be open-armed and say, we'll make a space for you because we believe in you and whatever, and we'll find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I mean, Beaker was someone that I don't even know how I got to know Beaker. She was hysterical, but Royal Renegades.
Yeah. I think like that number was maybe the last number she did or very close to. And we got along great. We had a great time, but like we never performed together again or anything. And I don't know, maybe she was just the catalyst that I needed just to be where I am today. So Beaker, wherever you are, thank you.
I see her every so often.
Do you? Okay, well, please tell her thank you.
Yeah, she teaches yoga. And I don't remember what else she does, but she's still around.
Good. So what are you thankful for because of drag?
Oh, God, I am thankful for the truly international community of people that I met because of drag. I mean, I have friends all over the world because of drag. And, you know, our iteration of drag kinging in the 90s and 2000s was groundbreaking. We were trailblazing. And we were building on people who went before us. They are not known very well either, but we laid the groundwork for what is happening now. And, you know, drag kings are still not getting the appreciation they deserve. I hope that will come at some time. But I'm grateful to know that me and my friends and all of our hard work, we're at the root of that in lots of ways. And the way that we did it, not just that we did it, but the way we did it, it carried on at least for 15 years. For that iteration of drag, it carried on. I don't know what drag kings are like now. I don't know how troupes operate, but I can say for sure in our period of drag that those philosophies and ethics spread, right? And like hearing you say how you all did stuff with Royal Renegades, I mean, that makes me feel good. Because I feel like those choices were all very intentional. They were all about, for us, about addressing oppression, patriarchal oppression, and we weren't using the language of cis back then, but like very cis sexist kinds of things and racist and all that. And by modeling that, other people did it.
Yeah.
They did it that way. And, you know, I feel really proud about that.
Do you feel drag kings and drag queens are treated equally in mainstream media or even in the community itself?
Oh, no. Drag, I mean, look at RuPaul. Like, he openly hates drag kings, doesn't think that we have any value or any, nothing to add to the world of drag. For him, drag means drag queen. There is no king that belongs after the word drag. And he's our, he, in the queer community and the drag community, he's the flag waver, he's the one that everybody knows. And so for me personally, I really do hold him responsible for our inability to break through, because he could have taken a different path. He could have been the same way we were. He could have said, we'll find room for you. I know that I didn't start out Drag Race with the intention that drag kings or trans women would be there, but you want to be part of this?
Yeah.
You can perform, we'll make a space for you. Instead, he chose the other path, which was greedy and exclusive, and it pisses me off. Yeah. And it's not what you do when you care about community. And so, drag kings get marginalized. We don't, people don't think we exist. If they think we do exist, they think it's not hard to be a drag king. All you have to do is slap on a mustache. Masculinity isn't hard to portray. We don't work hard. The drag kings that have had visibility have done it in a way that I think largely replicates toxic masculinity, which I don't appreciate. So I feel like the story of drag king community has not been told. Things like this are important to have it be told. For me, the essence of drag kinging will always be about community. So I don't know what it looks like right now, but the younger kings that I meet, when I have the opportunity to meet and talk to them, my conversation is always about, I want it to be about, if they're interested in hearing, how are we doing what we did, and how can you do that and make your performance more powerful? Because it isn't just about what you do on the stage for that 3 minutes. It's all of the things that go into what you do, how you do it, and why you do it. And it's performance is a big platform. So I personally believe that individuals, anytime you get good at what you do, you have a responsibility to take your ethics to your work. And if they're good, I mean, you know, I would like them to be the ones that are community driven and, but to pretend like, or not even pretend, but to actively exclude, it's just infuriating. It's infuriating. I hate it. It makes me mad. So RuPaul, if you are listening, come on now, let us in.
I'm sure RuPaul has a subscription to Boxland.
I'm going to send it to him.
Okay, do it.
He probably won't listen, but maybe one of his producers will.
What advice do you have for aspiring drag kings?
Find a community, because I really hope and I still believe that collaborative performance, it just has more spirit than competitive performance. So if you are in a community of performers, then it's less likely to be cutthroat, right? So I would say look for a drag king community. Learn from your elders, because they're out there, and own your identity. You know, make sure that you recognize that you have value for doing that work. You should get paid. You should get paid, period. You should be paid to do that work. You better keep your tips, and you want to be connected to a collaborative or a bar environment that values what you do, because you are the reason that people coming to the bar.
Yes.
They're not coming to the bar for that Bud Light. They are coming because you are on stage. So if you don't show up, it's the bar that's going to hurt in the end. It might feel like you will lose your opportunity to perform, but I just don't believe that's true. I don't. I think we have to know that we are the ones, that the performers are the ones that are driving the success of the bars. So, or whatever environment that you're in. It might take a while to get there, but I would say don't do drag alone. So I guess that's my long-winded advice.
Thank you very much for talking with me today. I really wish I would have joined the Renegades sooner, so I could have learned more from you. Your ideals have helped shape me as a person, as a producer, as a director, as everything. So thank you for all the hard work that you put in, and I have benefited from it greatly.
Well, thank you for keeping it alive, too. And, you know, this is how we build intergenerational community. So I'm really glad that you're doing this podcast, and it was cool to get to hang out.
Thank you for listening to Revisiting the Spotlight, and thank you to Boxland for giving underrepresented voices a platform to tell their stories. To learn more about Boxland and all the media services they provide, please visit boxlandmedia.com.